Hey everyone, how's it going today? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe in these crazy times that we're all going through. So today I want to talk to you about something I've been working on for about the last 7 years. And that is my 2001 Dodge Durango, which we named Ruby Rose. A little history first on how I acquired my Dodge Durango. It was 2013. My in-laws actually gifted us their 2001 Dodge Durango. It had about 115,000 miles on it. And I think they kind of gave it to us because they felt bad for us because we were taking my old Mitsubishi Lancer out camping pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So we're driving through all the BLM dirt roads back in Arizona to go camping. And I probably drove it for about 3 to 4 months in the condition that it was in. And pretty soon I noticed there's a lot of little things that needed some work with the suspension. Kind of needed a new CV axle, needed some brake work, some other little things like that was just going to cost some money to invest into the suspension. So at the time I was kind of pricing to see how much the work was going to cost me, but I also was hanging out with a couple of friends of mine, my buddy Jeremy and my buddy Jonathan, and they happened to convince me, or at least plant the seed in my mind, that I should probably do a solid axle swap on the Durango and lift it. And I say, kind of planted the seed. It helped that my buddy Jeremy actually had a solid axle swapped Dodge Dakota. So after seeing his lifted Dodge Dakota and searching the forums, Pirate 4x4, like all the other forums for solid axle swap Durangos, I pretty much was committed. So I started searching around Craigslist, trying to find axles. I think I bought a set of old Wagoneer axles, Dana 44s. And then I realized, Dana 44s wasn't the route I wanted to go. I wanted to put 37-inch tires on. I wanted something a little bit more durable. So I ended up selling those, found a set of Dana 60s out of a 1993 Ford F-350, and I got a smoking deal on that with rear axles, a Ford Sterling, as well as a set of cage radius arms. I think the company's now called Bloody Knuckle Garage or Busted Knuckle Garage, something along those lines, but they still make these radius arms for Broncos. So anyways, I spent a couple months acquiring all the parts that I was going to need. I bought various tabs and bracketry from places like Rough Stuff, Barnes 4-wheel drive, and Ballistic Fab. Once I had all the parts acquired, including the 37-inch tires that came with it, some old military tires, and then I just put it into the garage and kind of went to work. And I say this like I had all the tools and I had the shop space. I didn't. When I started this project, I had nothing tool-wise. I think I had a basic, like 63-piece mechanic set that I kept in my car. So a cousin of mine used to be a fabricator, and he kind of stopped and hadn't been working on things for years. So I ended up trading him some random goods for a TIG welder. My dad had a torch. I went and borrowed from him. I borrowed a bunch of his hand tools, and I think I bought, or I was gifted, a mechanics tool set from my in-laws. So with those parts, then I decided I would go to work. Now, my cousin that I got the welder from, he came over and kind of gave me a crash course in TIG welding. And basically what we did is I pulled out the rear axle that was behind the Dodge. He showed me how to weld by doing a spring over conversion on the Sterling axle to put underneath the rear end of the Durango. From there, I was pretty much all on my own. So the next thing we did was gut the front end of the IFS that was on the Durango, patched up the frame, reinforced it, did numerous renditions of link bracketry until we were able to get it under its own weight. And we ended up using some full-size Bronco coils for the front end. I ran Fox remote reservoir shocks on the front, 14-inch, and then just 14-inch Fox shocks in the back. It took about 3 months, and as soon as we finished, we went to the Overland Expo West, and that was its maiden voyage. Probably drove it around Arizona for another month or two before we moved to Colorado and brought it up here. When it was in Colorado, we actually had some issues on the way to Colorado. I ended up losing the AC. I didn't realize that one of the AC lines was actually rubbing against the coil bracketry, so it popped a hole in the AC lines. Had to get those repaired. I also had a electronic speed controller tied into the transmission sensor, and that thing blew after the road trip to Colorado, so I had to get that replaced. That being said, we basically didn't drive it for about a year. So all of 2014, 2015, because I was living in an apartment and I couldn't work on it. So in the spring of 2016, we moved into a new house. I had a 2-car garage, which was fantastic because I got to start on version 2 of the Durango. The first thing I did was I found a set of Bronco 2 leaf packs with a 5-inch lift off Craigslist from a local guy. It was random. And we swapped out the factory leaf springs for those, which raised the rear probably 2 inches, but more importantly, it moved the axle back about 2 inches. So relocated the axle back a couple inches, which gave me an extra bit of clearance because the 37-inch tires were rubbing the inner fender well, especially on the body side, or what would be the firewall side, I guess, for the rear. So it fixed that problem, and that was rock star. That year was the year that I did a bunch of little tweaks and just kind of got the Durango up and running again and started driving it a bit more. 2017 was going to be the first year we were planning to do a big Moab trip. We're actually going down to join the Easter Jeep Safari. And when we were gonna go there, I realized, hey, I don't have a spare tire. Maybe we should get a spare tire. And then also, I was like, well, if I'm gonna get a spare tire, I might as well get new tires. So I talked my wife into letting me buy some 40-inch tires. I really tried to get 42-inch tires, and she said, no 42-inch tires. Well, no 42-inch tires, so I took that literally, and I got a set of 41.5-inch pit bull rockers and threw them on the Durango. Unfortunately, the front was not clearance for 41.5-inch tires, so I had to move the front axle about 2 inches further from the original build forward. And while I was doing that, I had some caster issues on that axle with the geometry I was doing, so I went ahead and cut off the inner C's, clocked them back to get the caster set right, then I went ahead and gusseted those inner C's as well. Since we're getting ready to go to Moab, I quickly fabricated a front bumper as well as a rear bumper that had a swinger tire carrier. And we went down there and had a blast. It was my second time going down there, first time with the new tires and with front lockers. Before this, I'd always been open diff. So I put a lunchbox locker in as well in the front end when I did the new tires. And we had a blast. We did Hell's Revenge, we did Fins and Things. We did like 7-mile rim trail, I think that's a trail. And it was great. Great experience and great group of guys that we went with, and we wanted to go back. So 2017 to 2018, after that initial trip to Moab, we definitely wanted to get back. But there were some things that I wanted to do a little bit differently because we were driving it and I wanted something a little bit more bulletproof. So during the winter of 2017, I was shopping around on Craigslist as one does, and I found a Dodge Durango that was lifted with the exo cage that was for sale, and it was like crazy because you never see these things. But the guy just wasn't able to sell it for the price he was asking, and he ended up parting it out. So I basically bought the exo cage and a bunch of suspension bracketry off of his car. So that year there was a few things that I modified. So one, we added the exo cage. I went ahead and just cut the top half off, grafted it in with some custom tube work that I did into my rock sliders, and then the tube works that I did around the fender wells, and it came out great. My wife painted everything, sanded it. She was a total rock star. And the cage just came out absolutely fantastic. It helped really finish off all the bumpers and all those things. So yeah, so we added some rock lights, because you need rock lights, of course. And then we also added some lockers for the rear. So we had lunchbox lockers the previous year in the front, and this year we went ahead and upgraded to some selectable Yukon lockers in the back. As well as the lockers in the back, we upgraded the front axle shafts. We're now using some chromoly shafts as well as some Yukon hardcore locking hubs because I blew up the stub shaft that winter out four-wheeling and destroyed my hub. So we ended up upgrading to the bigger 35 spline outer hubs. So a year later, 2018, is our second trip down to Moab, and we're expecting the same kind of thing. Had a good time. We actually met up with some guys from the Full Size Invasion and love that group. If anyone has a full-size rig, highly recommend running with them on some of their trail events. and we did Behind the Rocks, and just absolutely had a blast. The very next day, we went and did Cane Creek Canyon, and on Hamburger Hill, I ended up breaking.
He can't back up. His shackle is hitting the rock.
Which really sucked. I inverted my shackle and snapped my mainspring. Fortunately, we were able to hobble off the trail, do a quick trail repair, and then get back to camp where we could get something that was a little bit more solid, because we kind of drove to Moab from northern Colorado. We were able to limp back to Colorado, but 2018 to 2019 was probably the biggest transition in the Durango. Like I said, this was the biggest build process. So doing the parallel 4-link, adding the 14-inch King coilovers, completely fabricating the coilover brackets. We added a TK1 Racing sway bar system, which was fantastic, just completely changed the way this thing handled. So that was pretty much 2018 to 2019 fabrication series. And it took a while because I was only working on the weekends, but once we got it all dialed in, I mean, that thing flexed like a monster. And also it handled a lot more. The Bronco 2 spring pack that we had on it originally was very tippy. It was the off-camber obstacles were very sketchy. As I like to say, there was quite a pucker factor. And the parallel 4-link with a sway bar was a welcome addition. So 2019, we went back to Moab, ran a bunch of trails with the full-size Invasion group again, did Behind the Rocks, Hell's Revenge, a few other trails, and I mean, the Durango just was a monster. It's one of those things at this point where you just point it in a direction and go. So that was 2019. That brought it up to date to basically where the Durango is now. There's definitely some things that needed to be tweaked.
We're very loaded. As you can see, the rear end is loaded down a little bit more than expected. Look underneath. We're pretty much about 1.5 inches left on our bump stops, both sides. So expect those to be getting a lot of work this trip down.
And you know, we wrote it down, but that's kind of where we're at this point. You know, it's got the exo cage, it's got the rear 4-link with coilovers, it's got the front Bronco coils with 14-inch remote reservoir shocks on the front. There's definitely things that I would like to do in the future. You know, it's a never-ending process. This is one of those things that's always evolving. But for like this year, this immediate time, I think what I'm gonna do is dial in the rear suspension. My coils on the back are a little soft, so I'm gonna upgrade the spring rates, as well as I'm gonna relocate the axle coilover brackets, just because I wanna get pretty much everything I can out of those 14-inch coilovers, and I'm losing just a hair currently with the way they're set up. The Durango's fantastic, it's a monster. I don't know if it's a suspension or really just having tires that are that big, but you just point it in one direction and it goes. So that is so much fun, and it's a completely different type of off-roading. That being said, we use it for camping, overlanding. We take it to a lot of places. I have a rooftop tent on it right now, so we can go out and do some camping once everything opens up again. And you know, it's just really great to get back into the really gnarly trails and really gnarly areas where not a lot of people want to take their Prius or Tacoma or whatever, because they're kind of sketched out, and you know, having the Durango that's capable with the winch and everything else that's associated with it, we go wherever we want and we could really get away from people, and it really makes camping a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is something that I've really enjoyed, I've been very passionate about, and it's just something so satisfying about building things with your hands. And it's one of the things that I'll probably do forever. You know, this has become a lifelong hobby. I've been wheeling and off-roading since I was 16. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I'm probably gonna include some more videos in the future with some fabrication aspect associated with it. I know I got a video coming where I built some rock sliders for a friend of mine. And I hope you guys enjoy that. So like and subscribe, follow along, hit that notification button if you would like to get notified of any of my future videos, and we will talk to you later.